do me, Envision Financial and Luke Smith, and you can give him a call, no obligation at all. Have a cup of coffee. Barb makes good coffee.
She does.
I tell you what, with this weather, she'll be serving it up. Does she make cocoa?
Do you know what? You just had hot chocolate jump in my head and I was all over it, I'll tell you. I'll have a word to her on Monday.
Yeah, there you go. It's fish and chips tonight too. Vinegar and squeeze the lemon.
Say no more.
There you go. Luke Smith, and you can contact him now, 6255 1206. If you'd like to make an obligation-free investigative report at his office in Townsend Street in Phillip, that's easy, 62604749. Look, this is a question that anybody, the banks, anybody who handles money like you do professionally as a financial planner, this has got to be the question you're asked over and over and over again.
Number one question.
How tall are you?
Exactly right, yeah.
How much do you need in retirement?
Well, that's, you know.
How high is up, I say?
Well, exactly right. And if I play my, if I put my lawyer hat on today, the automatic answer is, it depends. And it really does, because there are a number of things that can impact the value of what you need. And I think if people can start to change their thinking and start thinking in relation to what they want to do over how much they need, because having a better understanding of the things you want to do in retirement and trying to quantify that, because everybody's different. I have people come in and say, I can live on 30. I've had people tell me they can't live on 250. Everybody's in their own little world doing their own things with their own assets, liabilities, families, costs, expenses and life goals.
Other than winning lotto, Luke, is the real essence of this, you aren't going to be living on the same money you're earning year to year.
If you don't actively do something about preparing for it, there's a very, very big chance that, you're not going to have potentially the revenue that you had whilst you were working.
Right. Jump forward, chances are on the positive side of things, Luke Smith, you probably have no kids at home, so you're not paying for them, the education costs are gone.
Yep.
You've paid off your BMW and your Audi, so you've got those, you don't have to pay them off. Your house is okay.
Correct.
So you've got less expenses really, haven't you?
Exactly, and they're the sorts of things that I think people should focus on. And it's a combination of what does retirement look like to an individual, and then what are we working with. So some of the key things that will obviously change the number will be, do you have a spouse? So is it individual or couple? Are you entitled to Centrelink or not? Okay. Do you plan on working or not? Because working's not a bad thing. The more time I spend talking to people about what retirement looks like, the more they tend to agree now with all of the little side hustles that are going on with Uber driving and Deliveroo and all these other things that you can do to try and get a little bit of money on the side. People are actually coming to the realisation that that old school mentality of I've retired, I'm professionally dead, isn't actually the case. And I spend a lot of time working with people trying to say, okay, well, if we want to be able to do an A, B and C, what are my fixed costs? Everybody's fixed costs are different. What's your land tax? What's your rates? What's your house? What's your electricity? How big's your home? How small's your home? How many kids have you got? How many cars are you running? How many registrations you paying? These are the things people need to get a handle on in relation to their fixed costs. And then I'd work up to your discretionary costs. Are we going to go overseas once a year? Do we have a domestic holiday? Do we want to go and visit the grandkids in da-da-da? Wherever they may be, these are all things that you want to be able to do to spend your time effectively and enjoying your retirement. Some other things I'd think about are, what other income do we have that can generate revenue?
Rental property?
Do we have a rental property? Do we have shares? All of those sorts of things are going to add to that ultimate number of how much. I'd start saying, what resources do I have? Because you can invest $1 million and earn 10 grand. You can invest $1 million and earn 100 grand. And they come with varying degrees of risk. So the important thing people tend to miss is you need to align your expenses with your attitude towards risk. Okay, because your attitude towards risk will have a direct impact on the amount of income that your assets generate. So if we have a very defensive approach to investment, you might have $1 million that generates $20,000, got lots of cash and fixed interest. You might say, well, I'm quite happy to ride the lightning and I'm going to have a very high growth allocation of things, and in some years you'll be amazing. In other years you may be wildly negative, but you might earn $100,000 on your $1 million. But if you were sort of middle of the rung and said, okay, well, and I use this analogy in the office a lot, if I'm driving in an 80 zone and I do 70 to 90, I'm going to avoid being late, people hurling abuse at me and throwing their water bottles. And if I don't do 160 in an 80 zone, I won't get a ticket and if I hit a tree, I'm not dead, and I probably won't lose my license.
Yeah.
So 70 to 90, most people can appreciate and identify with. And really, that's where you could turn around and say, well, if I had a diversified portfolio and I was earning 4 to 5% of income, including franking credits, whether we keep them or not, that's a different story. But let's say you played at 4.5%.
Yeah.
That's $45,000 on $1 million. Now, generally speaking, I sort of say to people as a very, very basic guide, if you think about your fixed household expenses, you've probably got 2 cars for registration, you've got heating, electricity, water, gas,
rates,
and they vary rates depending on the season and what you're using them for. But you've probably got about 10 grand of fixed costs, roughly. And then most people generally say to me, fair and reasonable, you could probably put another $1,000 a week in there, tax-free. So, you know, it's one of those things. There's no real answer that's right or wrong here because everybody's different. But if you wanted a very, very general guide, and look, you go to the Money Smart website, the Money Smart website says that a couple on a modest lifestyle, they estimate $39,353. Couple on a comfortable lifestyle, $60,264, which is in line with that basic mud maps that we sort of just talked about. 10 for fixed costs, 1,000 a week. But the most important thing is, if your portfolio is generating a really good, strong income stream, and you had $1 million, if you needed 60 and you're only generating 50, you've got tens and tens and tens of years before you're actually going to run out of capital. But if you're only generating $20,000 from your $1 million, and you've got to access 40,000 of capital because your risk profile isn't in line with your income needs, then you're actually potentially increasing the risk that you'll eat into your capital a lot faster than you think. So it's very difficult to say how much. It's more about getting to people to start to think, well, what's my risk profile and what sort of income could we look to generate? And then work it backwards and say, okay, if I wanted $50,000 a year at 5%, there's $1 million of capital. If I wanted 100 grand, there's $2 million. So as a back of the envelope sort of calculation, I generally work it backwards at 4%, assuming that people can take a balanced growth approach where you'd have 70% in growth assets, 30% in cash and fixed interest, and some good diversification. You need to be in assets in a super fund that provide strong reoccurring income. Income's king in retirement.
Now you said 2 words, Luke Smith, very important ones: what you want and what you need.
Correct.
So it's almost like a shopping list. Let's write down what we have to spend.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Yeah, I'd actually work it backwards because it's very hard. Because if you ask 8 out of 10 people what it costs to run their household, you get a Kevin Hart shoulder shrug.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. So understanding your budget's one of the things that people need to try and get a handle on to be able to actually plan the numbers that they need to be able to fund their lifestyle. Because what your friends do and what your mum does and what your cousins do doesn't matter.
But in fact, if you said to yourself, oh, okay, I'm going to retire, we'll get to that too. I'm going to retire, I want $1.5 million. That puts you under a lot of pressure, doesn't it, to get to that?
It does, and you know, we're going to touch on some of the implications and some of the things people need to think about when coming up with those numbers, because the longer I do this job, the more I realise people must do more sooner. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you compound a little bit sooner, a little bit more, a little bit sooner, a little bit more, at the end of the day, when you've got to the end of your working life, or a transition to a job you actually enjoy doing, all of those things add up, because the government's not making it any easier for us to get money into a tax-effective structure like superannuation. So we need to make the most of the legislation, and we need to plan ahead. And we're going to talk about some strategies that people can think about so that they can actually be proactive.
Put a jelly bean in a jar every day, and you'll soon have a jar full of jelly beans.
Well, as my daughter says when she ransacks my jeans, Daddy, I found some monies.
And can we just go to that wall where you get the money out of the hole in the wall? Luke Smith, Envision Financial. You can call him now on 6255 1206 and keep in mind, make an appointment, have a cup of coffee or a cup of cocoa with Barb at Suite 2, 44 to 52, down the end of Townsend Street near the roundabout. It's upstairs, you can't miss it. Townsend Street in Phillip. Give him a call, 62604749. How much do you need in retirement? You got a question for Luke? 1325 with Luke Smith, Envision Financial on 62604749. Okay, we're talking about retirement, and you say it all depends on your hunger.
Yep.
How thirsty and how much you drink and how much you eat, that will underpin how much you think you need in retirement. Let's wipe the slate clean.
Yep.
When do I start thinking about planning and getting it done? What do I do?
Well, look, I don't think you can never start too soon.
No.
But I'm also saying you don't have to go and live in a tent and eat bread and
You
butter.
don't have to be miserable.
No,
right?
not at all. It's
No.
far from that.
What's
So
wrong with beans?
beans are okay, just not 3 meals a day, every day, like olives.
But come in with a positive attitude.
Yeah, look, I think it's something people need to be proactive about. I think younger people are going to benefit from increasing superannuation guarantee payments over time, which is a great piece of legislation. Do more sooner and understand. Even if you did a little bit of active saving into a bank account, you can always then use that to reduce your mortgage, to make a super contribution, to make a spouse contribution, or a range of different things. But managing your cash flow and your budget is the first thing that I would try and...
Should you be debt free when you start planning or not?
No, look, not at all.
Not
Because most people don't get debt free until later in life because of the size of mortgages that we have to take out and things of that nature. So you don't have to go holus bolus 150 miles an hour into this, but you can actually have good consistent behaviours, and consistency there is the key. Behaviour and consistency. Just do something regularly, and it might just be X amount of money out of your fortnightly pay into another bank account that you don't touch, and set a goal for 3 months, set a goal for 6 months, and get there. I was working with some people today, and when I told them that his wife should go shopping with cash, she was over the moon about it, and you should have seen the sigh of relief on his face. But they're good behaviours. They might sound like old school behaviours, but if you want to get a handle on your budget, go shopping with cash.
And I like the 3, 6, 12 months.
Yeah. Look, you need to reward yourself for these things, because you're not going to save $1 million overnight. It is a slow, progressive thing, and reward yourself. If you say, okay, if me as an individual, or myself and my wife, or whatever your situation is, if you can go out and save and hit a target, and reward yourself, because that's what we're here for right now. So focus on what you're doing, understand your fees and charges. Okay. If you're going to generate income, try and maximise your franking credits. Focus on paying off non-deductible debt where possible.
Which is?
So home loan.
Okay.
Okay. Now we've talked about offset accounts and redraw facilities in previous shows, and starting to stack these strategies on top of each other. I can save well into the right structure, into an offset account. Then lets me stack on a personal deductible contribution at the end of the year, which then reduces my income tax, which then increases my refund, which then increases the money I can save into my bank account, and off we go. So they're the sorts of things that you need to do. Talk to someone. It sounds silly, but it kills me when people come in, sit down and go, oh, we can do A, B and C, and they say, I wish someone had told me that 5 years ago. Well, don't waste 5 years finding out, because the cost could be far more than what you may pay for an hour of somebody's time. Understand what you want to do most. If you're getting close to retirement, have an idea of
what's close to retirement.
Well, it depends on how old you are.
Isn't it a mental thing?
Well, it is. See, for me, my definition of retirement is as soon as you can say no to an employment opportunity and fund your lifestyle, you've retired.
Right.
Now, whether you can or can't access super, that's a different matter. But if you've accumulated assets outside of super, you can fund yourself until you hit your preservation age, be it 55, be it 60, or anywhere in between. So some of the key strategies that I think people could proactively take advantage of at the moment are obviously maximise your deductible contributions to super. Now we know that $25,000 is the most you can put in any 1 year, and that includes your employer contributions. If you've got some spare money,
recap that too, because you've explained that very well. You said if you're going to put 25,000 in your employees, put 15 already.
Yeah, then you've got 10.
Yeah.
So don't be that person around the water cooler on the first week of July saying, oh, I put 25 in, and everyone when they walk off laughing, you know why. So remember, take into account your employer contributions. If you're in a com super like a PSS and a CSS, make sure you log in and check what your recorded amount is, because that's on their website. You can log in, it's just under the I estimator section on the ComSuper CSS PSS, and see what's recorded against your concessional cap. That will tell you how much room you have so that you're not guessing. Now, if you have an offset account, save into that during the year and reduce the interest you incur on your home loan. Then use that to make a personal deductible contribution. Look at super splitting opportunities. So we had a couple of really good examples this week in the office where we had 3 to 4, 5 years between spouses. So we max out her contributions. Then we split 85% of them to her husband, and she then brings forward her preservation age by up to 5 years because he's going to retire before she is. So let's get the money in the older person's name. Now, that's a strategy that you can't catch up. You need to do that every year, and that needs to be actioned in July. So if you don't do it 1 year, you can't transfer twice as much next year. So look at those sorts of strategies. Understand your budget, okay? Be proactively looking at where money goes. Don't guess and don't assume, okay? Look at recontribution strategies. This is a really good time of year to be looking at maybe starting a transition to retirement pension from your superannuation fund so that you've got $20,000 to take out to put straight back in and claim 100% of that as a tax deduction, because you may not have any free cash lying around at the moment. So looking at those recontribution strategies is very, very good. And also look at selling personal assets. Now, Bill's thrown up that he's going to potentially change the capital gains tax rules. Now, we don't want to dance in shadows, but if you can control something and you're thinking about selling it, getting a 50% deduction is better than getting a 25% deduction. Obviously, it needs to be appropriate to your situation, but think about these things because they are going to impact decisions. But they're just a few very simple strategies that people can make the most of before, obviously, legislation change. But they're good behaviour.
Yeah. And the earlier the better, Luke.
Yeah, look, as I say, it comes back to what is your priority. A lot of younger people may have a significant amount of debt. That's great. Focus on paying that down, but do it correctly. Use an offset account. Build up accessible funds in your mortgage. Don't lose access to your capital.
I'm getting the feeling that don't rely on your super.
Well, it's just one facet.
Yes.
It could be just one facet. So if my life's goal was to retire at 50, funneling all my money into super and I can't get it till I'm 60, it's not going to be appropriate. So you need to have some balance. You might have some property, you might have a company, you might have a trust, you might have a business you're going to sell. You might be a salaried employee, you might be in a defined benefit scheme. They are just resources that we can access. Working is a resource. And a lot of people tell me, well, I've retired, I've counted it down, I've had some time off, I've gone away, I've come back, I've had a caravan, I've had a holiday, I've seen the grandkids.
I'm bored.
Now what?
Yeah, I'm bored.
And now they use working as a lifestyle measurement. Okay, we want next year we're going to go to America and we're going to drive around America in a combi van for 6 months. Okay, well, what will that cost? $60,000. Okay, go and get a job. Yeah. And they spend 6 months working, bank the cash, carry on. It gives people the comfort to know that the longevity of their capital is sustainable. So working is not a bad thing. You're not going to die. It's not a professional death. It's just something that you can now use to fund the way you want to live. Because you may not have saved enough money to generate enough income to cover all your costs.
So the question answered or not? How much do I need in retirement, Luke Smith? You haven't told me.
It depends.
Oh, funny, deja vu. We're back to where we started from. Consult Luke, no obligation. You can give him a call, 6260-4749. Have a talk with him, free of charge, no obligation. Get the strategies right. Start thinking about your retirement. It shouldn't be a life of misery as you start to plan all this. And there are other ways to do it if you missed our conversations.
Yeah, look, for sure. You know, search Strategy Stacker, Luke Talks Money on iTunes. And obviously, we've got the show on YouTube now, and we've had a lot of really positive feedback about that. We've got the key takeouts halfway through the show and at the end, so you can check that out. You can also go to our website, www.envisionfinancial.com.au. Go to the resources tab. We've got the knowledge centre there. That's where you could delve into the how much, when, how, and why, and you can analyse that all through the weekend because it's raining and there's nothing else to do. So give the kids an iPad and jump on the resource centre and have a crack. That's free subscription. People enjoying that. We'll give you a month for nothing. You can have a play, and then we can sort it out.
Best thing, see them face to face at 52 Townsend Street, Phillip, upstairs, second floor, 6260-4749. Luke Smith and the good team at Envision Financial. We'll see you in a week.
See you next week.